Mark Waid, Sina Grace, Marv Wolfman, Alex Segura, Travis Moore, Dean Haspiel, Jack Herbert, and Fico Ozio celebrate the return of the Man of Steel as Clark Kent makes his return to Earth known to his closest friends and family while helping them deal with some classic villains. Mark Waid, Sina Grace, Marv Wolfman, and Alex Segura finish up the Kal-El return story arc with a strong set of stories that celebrate the Man of Steel's return to Earth, touching base with characters like Batman and Jimmy Olsen, while also pushing forward the overall plot with Lex Luthor and everything he's doing with Metallo and setting up different crime organizations, and even tying out some of the slight plot discrepancies with Dark Crisis when Superman gets involved and gets teleported away from Warworld. While the book was a celebration of Superman's return, it was as much a family book as it was his solo outing, with two stories dealing with John's impact on the world in Clark's absence and how he's been dealing with villains like Lex, and the other story dealing with the Justice League legacy and how it's not just a team, but a home for many heroes and one that can help them grow as people and as heroes. Mark Waid was also sure to promote his own books in this with a tie-in with World's Finest, but unlike his stuff in the Dark Army tie-in recently, it was much more reserved and wasn't constantly in your face, and it was just like a one-off sort of, hey, come read this book if you want to. It wasn't just constantly tied into the story intricately and everything, which I really appreciate him doing this time around. Travis Moore, Dan Haspiel, Jack Herbert, and Fico Ozio lend artwork to the four stories and are all pretty good, although I can see people not liking Dean's work, and while it grew on me over time, it really did stand out like a sore thumb between Travis Moore and Jack Herbert's work, which is a lot more classical and structured superhero comic book artwork. Ozio's work in the finale was my favourite, and I love how they draw Superman with a big barrel chest and the huge S symbol that covers up his whole torso, and the bright colours of the costume just look so damn good throughout the issue. Superman Return of Kal-El Special Issue 1 was a fun set of 4 stories that chronicle Kal-El's return to Earth and how his friends and family react to his return, building off already established stories and setting up a cool new beginning for Action Comics issue 1050 coming soon. I'm going to give this issue a 9.5 out of 10. Superman Return of Kal-El Special Issue 1 finds Batman remember how in 1913 an experimental ballet called The Rite was performed, and it calls the audience watching to break into a riot that has now somehow arrived in the 21st century. Batman uses Wesley Dodds' sleeping gas to knock out the rioters as Superman arrives. Batman asks what he wants, learning Superman is there for truth, justice, and maybe some breakfast. Batman hugs his good friend, knowing that he would come back from Warworld as he fills Clark in on what's happening, unsure of who they are under attack from, but he knows it's a historic event that is attacking them. Batman says that the sanity is being leached away from the area and surreal chaos is filling the void, making heroes know that this is the work of Mr. Nobody. Superman thought that he was more of a Doom Patrol villain, but Batman knows that it's hardly the first time he's challenged the world's finest. Superman begins seeing outbreaks all over Gotham, honing in on the villain's location, as Mr. Nobody meanwhile conducts a concert of the rioters, but Superman quickly takes his conductor's baton, snapping it in half. Nobody is angered that he would dare break the baton of Pierre Monteur, the man who conducted the ballet's premiere. He tells the heroes that they have no respect for the power of past greatness, proclaiming that the time is liberating them as he traps them in a golden and silver age comic book panel. Superman hopes that Batman knows a way out of their prison, and the hero tries to think like nobodies, since by confining them, the heroes can logically conclude that they are trapped, so therefore they become trapped because they thought they have been trapped, meaning that they are limited by their own reasoning. Batman wants them to think hard about something else, like flowers, which begin to manifest around them and break the panel, allowing them to leave the prison. Mr. Nobody isn't pleased the heroes are free, demanding that they serve as his pawns in the Brotherhood of Nothing. He tries to turn the heroes into shapes like him, but they turn back to normal, knowing that they don't have to do what he says. The villain is sucked into the snapped baton as the heroes wonder who gets the villain trophy this time. Later on at Bruce's house, Bruce cooks them both breakfast, saying that he likes being in the heart of the city, but he doesn't like living alone. Clark thanks him for looking after his family since keeping them safe was quite an effort. Bruce thinks that he's bracing for something as Clark is unsure of Bruce's cooking. Bruce defends himself, saying that he was trained at the best chef academy in Paris during his youthful travels. Clark doesn't buy it as Bruce says that his knowledge of egg whites once helped him capture a diamond smuggler in Brussels. After a moment, he tells Clark that he's been joking the entire time as he serves up an omelette to his friend, and Clark can't believe how delicious it is. Elsewhere, Jimmy Olsen live streams from the backseat of a high-tech jet which is about to go to supersonic speed. The pilot tells him to pause the chit-chat since they're being intercepted by a bogey. The pilot demands they state their intentions as he readies for aggressive maneuvers, but Jimmy knows that it's okay since it's Superman who is joining them at Mach 4. Later on, after the jet lands, Jimmy reunites with his friend, learning that he's back for good this time. Jimmy thinks that he's definitely needed since the world has been struggling without him, and the hero just being around makes everyone feel safer. Jimmy tries to get some video on him, but Superman wants to do this the more traditional way, wanting to communicate his return with a single picture. Jimmy knows that he was meant to get some shots of the Schuster Arena redesign, but this feels more like a job for Jimmy Olsen. Jimmy gets to work, following Superman around as he does what he does best, but finds the shots aren't giving what he wants, wanting to find something different than what he's done before. Jimmy begins to worry he's not going to get the shot, but Superman tells him that they're going to have a break, getting a pretzel with his friend and going to the top of the Daily Planet. While eating, Jimmy says that it's been hard without him and he's been on assignment a lot, going to war zones and climate disasters and uprisings, and it feels like the world is right about to crumble. Clark wants to see what Jimmy has shot, so Jimmy shows him the small gallery showcase he's been doing on his work to raise money for some local charities, and it's why he's been so hard on himself to get the perfect picture of Superman's return. Clark is distracted, making Jimmy think that he's got to go, but Clark says that John is dealing with it. Jimmy is reminded of some pictures he has of John, telling Clark that his son has been doing a great job, even having his own approach to the superhero game that the kids these days respond to, since he finds a way to stick around after saving the day to work with people and make sure the problem doesn't come right back. Jimmy knows that despite that, it will mean so much for the entire world to see Clark back as Superman. Clark isn't so sure since he's happy to be back, but seeing the pictures, he sees humanity taking science, technology, and compassion to new heights, and while there definitely has been darkness, Jimmy has shone a light onto some extraordinary humans. Jimmy figures out what the shot should be and later goes back up into the jet, told by the pilot he's eating into their photo exercise budget, so he better make it worth it. Jimmy knows it will be worth it as he takes a picture of Superman looking over the pictures Jimmy captured of the greatness of humanity. Later in Italy, Clark tells Lois that he's seen some magnificent things throughout the galaxies, but the most beautiful thing has always been on Earth. Lois knows her second honeymoon has been perfect, and Clark says he wanted to do this so much since it won't be much longer before people realize he's back in town and the madness begins again. Clark wonders if she wants to go and get some of the best pizza in Venice that John told him about, and Lois wants to get it a little later. 2 days later, John calls his parents and welcomes them home to Metropolis, telling them that he might have something to put Luthor behind bars for good. Clark asks if he needs backup, but John knows he can deal with it, following one of Lex's couriers. Clark warns him about Lex and how he's led him down false paths before since he's a very smart man. John knows he's also arrogant, and arrogance ends up with mistakes. His parents tell him to be careful as Superman smashes into Lex's hideout, but Lex welcomes him as it's revealed that Luthor is holding a press conference for LexCorp Charities, which has bought the warehouse they are in and are turning it into living facilities for the homeless, all of which have been approved by the city. Lex hopes that he'll come and pose for some PR photos with the door he smashed down, but Superman leaves, telling his father all about the false paths he was warned about. Meanwhile, at Stryker's Island, some prisoners make a breakout attempt, escaping in one of the prison carriers. John returns home as Lex on TV states how the Super Brat destroys anything he doesn't like, such as homeless housing. John knows that his intel was right and he was being led to a weapons factory, but Clark knows that he was set up in a distraction, and John fell for it since Lex is smart. John knows they have all of these superpowers though, but Clark tells him that's nothing compared to someone who scored a 1600 on their SATs. John is frustrated that he won't be as good as his father, but Clark assures his son that he'll be better than him, reminding him that Superman never lies. The Supermen get ready to go on patrol, flying through the city as Clark tells John that he's going to stick to the shadows since he's not ready to reveal himself just yet. Lois contacts them and tells them that the police are responding to some armed soldiers at the docks. same ones who broke out of strikers recently. The heroes head for the docks as Clark knows that this isn't Luther's doing, but who knows. John takes the lead as the men open fire on him, making him comment why they always do that to bulletproof people, asking his father to join in. Clark doesn't want to just yet, since he's done this a million times before and this is John's game. John deals with the men, learning that they aren't tied to Luther at all as Lois tells them of another attack in Oaktown sewage across town, finding more soldiers are there too. John takes the men back to prison, telling them it's only a matter of time before they tie them to Luther, but if they talk now, they can cut a deal. The men refuse to talk, but one of them says that they are running the hero ragged all around town for nothing, but John knows they aren't as smart as Luther, and Luther's not as smart as he thinks he is, being that he hired these guys. He leaves the men with the prison guards and returns to see Luther in his warehouse. Luther is happy that he opened the door this time and didn't barge through it. Superman knows that the soldiers, like the couriers, were all just a distraction so he could commit his actual crime across town. John figures that Lex was just testing him to see how he would react and what he would go after first. He admits he foolishly showed his hand by going after the soldiers, which meant that he could do his crime safely across town. Lex pretends to not know what he's talking about, but John tells the villain that he's so screwed. John returns home, telling his parents that they need to rethink their strategies to keep Luther on his toes, and while he doesn't know what he did, he made sure to make the villain think that he knew enough, which made Lex pissed. John asks his parents about the pizza in Venice he recommended, but Lois knows that they got a little too busy to get any, telling their son they were busy touring, but John knows for once, Superman's lying to him. Days before, Superman returns to Earth, remembering how home isn't a person or a place or a feeling, and you can have many homes for many reasons, and to him, the Hall of Justice will always be a home to him, since it's the place of warmth, friendship, camaraderie, and support. Superman enters the hall, knowing that even a familiar home can be loaded with surprises. He wonders where everyone is as suddenly Naomi tackles the Man of Steel with a hug. Martian Manhunter is surprised to see Clark is back, as the hero knows that he's not looking on the past and legacy of the Justice League with John, but its future as well thanks to Naomi being there. The Flash soon arrives, hearing that there was a homecoming going on. Clark is happy to see Wally as the Speedster hugs him, unsure that he would be back. The heroes have much to discuss as Wally reveals he's got breakfast made for all of them. The heroes all sit down at the core bar, sharing stories about Batman making jokes, as Naomi finds it awesome that legends like Flash, Manhunter and Superman are just sitting around talking with each other like old pals. Wally knows that they are just heroes who are old friends. Naomi still thinks it's special, so Superman takes her into the museum, knowing that they weren't always like this and they wouldn't have gotten where they are without the League, since at its heart, the League is a place to grow and a legacy that will continue no matter what happens. Superman tells her that her being in the League teaches you a lot, like how to survive and trust each other. He shows her the monuments to fallen heroes, knowing that they have seen loss and sacrifice, but even during their losses and overwhelming odds, they survived and pressed on, and the bonds between them all became stronger, something which carried on in his absence. Superman tells his friends that he needed this, but he needs to go now. The heroes don't want their friend to go straight away, but Clark assures them that he'll be back. He just needs to check in on something. He finds saying goodbye to Wally and John nothing new, but for Naomi it's different, as he assures her that he'll be back, wanting her to think about how this place is a touchstone and a North Star, and she will be amazed at how much she will come to rely on it, as the League is a rock to lean on, but most importantly, it's also a home. Superman takes off for Warworld in orbit, but he is suddenly teleported away to aid with the Dark Crisis.